Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this evening's live stream. Now, I'm going to start off giving you a little update about our election campaign for a few minutes before I hand over to our special guests. Well, they're more than special guests, actually. They're going to take over completely. I'm going to disappear after I've done my little update, and they're going to have a chat. I will introduce that section to you in a few minutes. So what's been happening in our election campaign? Well, we've certainly been busy. We had our little slot on BBC Reporting Scotland last night. They just had a minute or two for each party. So we had our little slot, and miracle of miracles, we were stunned and amazed, flabbergasted that the BBC gave us a reasonable hearing, and it wasn't just a complete hit job the way it usually was. So it was a pretty fair representation. I mean, they picked some pretty obscure policies of ours to include, and they didn't necessarily present them in a way that were going to be then the most attractive way to people, or the way that people will be able to best understand what we're talking about. But overall, it was reasonably fair. So that was great. It was interesting looking at the website statistics when we were on the BBC, the huge spike in people going to our website to see what's going on. While I'm on the subject of our website, I mean, do go along to it, scottishfamily.org. We've done a lot of work on it over about a year, really, updating the structure, and you can see the new design, and it really is looking great, and there's a lot of good stuff there. So do go over to our website and have a look. On Friday this week, our party election broadcast is going to be broadcast on BBC. I think it's 5 to 8 in the evening. You can check on the BBC schedule, but you'll see it there, Scottish Family Party election broadcast. That's sort of 4.5 minutes long. So we'll publish that on YouTube very soon as well. But you'll be able to watch that on the BBC. It'll be on STV as well. Our flyers that were sent to every house in Scotland are in the process of going out. They've gone out in the northeast, more or less. They're about to go out in Highlands and Islands, and the rest of Scotland following very soon afterwards. But the response to the flyers has been fascinating. I made a video responding to one man who made a sort of angry video saying our flyer was, disgusting and vile and whatever. But some of the mail we get and the phone messages, it's frankly unbelievable. But you can only describe it as hate mail. But there's some people, they just fly off the handle. But then in among that, we also get a lot of positive mail as well. People who say, this is fantastic. It's great. I can vote for someone in good conscience at last in this election. So that's been very encouraging. Now, we've got quite a decent budget to spend on social media advertising as well. And that's just going to get started tonight. I just got that started earlier on today. So we'll be sharing some of our social media content to people who probably will have never heard of the Scottish Family Party so far. It's a bit galling having to pay for Facebook advertising while Facebook deliberately restricts our page. And that says it all about Facebook's morals, doesn't it? They say, oh, the family party, very bad people, very dangerous content. We really don't want to share that to too many people, unless they pay. I mean, if they pay, obviously that's fine. They'll show it to as many people as you like. But if you don't pay, then really they want to keep a lid on it. I mean, it is quite clearly foreign interference in the Scottish election because Facebook are restricting our page. This is not some suspicion, and they're quite open about it. They say, we are restricting your page. And that's during the election campaign. And also, bizarrely, on Facebook, if you go to the Scottish Family Party Facebook page and click like, a message comes up saying basically, are you sure? Do you really realize what these people are like? Do you want to have a look at what they share before you like the page? I mean, can you believe that? And all the other parties, all the the SNP with their sort of mass killing of unborn children, or whatever. I mean, that's all fine. You can like this straight away. But the Scottish Family Party, you get a, do you really want to like this page? Message from Facebook. So we're up against it with the social media companies, as always. Now, media coverage through the campaign so far has been just amazing. Some of it through our projections. We projected Stop Confusing Children on the Pavement in Perth. They ended up a story in the Daily Record. Some of the ones we did a couple of projections on the abortion clinic in Edinburgh. That ended up in a few newspapers, ended up on the BBC. So that's been great. Our other secret weapon in the media, of course, has been Philip Tanzer, our German ex-gay, ex-porn star. He's had, I wouldn't say countless, but a lot of media appearances during the campaign. So that's been great. Now, I'll just give you a sneak preview of some of the projection images we've got up our sleeve to share with the media very soon. I've sent some on as press releases today, but I'll just show you a few of these just quickly. Okay, this is up in Aberdeen. Tackle poverty, promote marriage. That looks like the beginning of Star Wars, doesn't it? That looks great. It looks so massive, right? Children's rights. How about the right to be born? I mean, Nicola Sturgeon the other day said it was morally repugnant that there was some sort of legal challenge to the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child incorporation into Scots law. Just some technicality. She said it was morally repugnant, whereas she rejoices in the killing of unborn children. Right, that's the rainbow painted sort of LGBT themed steps in Aberdeen. So we thought that would be a good place to project our new Mr. Swinney Stop Teaching Gender Confusion. We're expecting that might get something of a reaction. We've realized to get into the media often, what you need is someone opposing you. If someone's saying, this is a disgrace, how are the Scottish Family Party allowed to do this? Then that's what makes it a story, and that's what gets it into the media. Then people who agree with us can see our message and find out about us. That was in Dundee. And yeah, so there's just a quick preview. Right, so on to this evening's special guest. Now, the first of our special guests is familiar to you. That's Michael Willis, the Scottish Family Party chairman. Hello, Michael. Good evening.
Good evening.
And joining Michael this evening, new to the live stream, is our deputy chairman, Don Marshall. Now, I could give a little introduction about Don. There's lots you can say about Don, but if I do that introduction, I'll probably be stealing his thunder for what they're going to talk about this evening. So I'll welcome Don. Hello, Don. Good to see you.
Good evening. Thanks for having me on tonight. But I was on last week at Meet the Candidates, so... You were.
Yeah,
I was.
A brief appearance. Right, I will now retreat and hand over to Michael and Don.
Thanks for that very positive and encouraging introduction, Richard. I mean, as always, you've been very creative and generating a lot of interest in our campaign. So, and I know you're motivating our candidates. And yes, we did meet Don last week, and we had a lovely conversation. And I know I heard from some of the others, look, let's have a closer look at Don. And so I'm very privileged to be interviewing him this evening. And I've got a number of themes I want to cover. But and Don was the first person I met in the Scottish Family Party. He kindly popped by and we had a chat about what was happening because everybody else has just been a face on the screen. So Don was the first one, and he gave me a warm welcome. And I suppose in terms of an opening question, I'd quite like to know a little bit about your background leading up to the position we find ourselves in now. And I'm especially interested in your sort of boarding school background and how that's helped shaped you today, Don.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in a military family. My father was in the Air Force, and a lot of the time in my early years, he was stationed in Scotland. We lived in Dundee, and we also lived in Germany. Lived around Fife because he was based at Leuchars, and also then up at Lossiemouth. So I lived in Elgin and kind of grew up in Elgin for a number of years. But then he went and got a commission. He became an officer and was living down in England, posted down to England. I went to school in England for a year, which was quite informative. I moved from Elgin, where I kind of spricket really broad Scots, you'd glick at loon and things like that, and went straight down to Lincolnshire, and no one could understand a word I said. But I could understand them because I'd seen EastEnders. But it was kind of tough. But that was really interesting. But after a year, my dad thought that the Scottish education was far superior than English. And at that time, it really, really was. It was seen as a little better. And so he looked for a boarding school. And being in the military, there was a military boarding school in Dunblane called Queen Victoria School, and it's for sons of servicemen, Scottish servicemen. And so I went there, and it was a pretty tough school. It was a bit like being in the army at age 13, and you had to learn to look after yourself and grow up quick and fend for yourself. And they made us play rugby in the snow and things like that. So it was pretty tough, cross country first thing in the morning. But whilst I was there, I did meet the Duke of Edinburgh. So it was sad to see his passing, and I know we discussed this on another forum the other night.
Yeah, that just cut out there, Don. Could you check your connection?
Right, I hope Don will be able to get tuned in very soon. I guess his internet connection's gone a bit funny. Oh, he's disappeared. So I'm sure he's going to log back in. And I'm sure when he does that, it's going to be absolutely fine. Guaranteed. I just realized I forgot to mention an absolutely key element in our campaign. The thing that is very possibly going to be the turning point in the 2021 election. And that was the publication of our campaign song by Charles McEwen. How did I possibly forget that? If you haven't heard it, don't leave now because you're busy watching this. But after this, go and watch our campaign song on YouTube or Facebook, The Wild Nationalist by Charles McEwen. It's very, very good. I will be sharing that around quite widely in the next couple of weeks. Right, Don hasn't appeared just yet, but I'm sure he'll be appearing very soon. Right, what can we talk about in the meantime?
I was just saying, what a great set of successes you introduced our viewers to over this last week. It's been terrific.
I've just remembered another one as well. Now, I'm very guilty here because the things that I remembered, all the things I've been involved in. I forgot the things I've been less involved in. Our TikTok account. Now, who'd have thought it? I'm not sure many parties have a TikTok account. But being a particularly youthful and trendy party, we've got a TikTok account. And I've been hearing statistics from it, which were pretty impressive. Thousands of people being reached by that, and quite a reaction on that. So we're going to try and get some more content on TikTok, and we'll see how that goes. I hardly know anything about what's going on there, but apparently it's going well and reaching a good number of people. It's interesting. Don was doing an interview with a local podcast the other day. And one of the questions he was asked is about the quality of broadband in the Perthshire area. And while he was trying to answer it, it kept going wrong, which was quite appropriate. But now we have returning live, Don.
Yeah, I just caught the end of that. Yeah, that's true. Yesterday, it was on Monday. I was interviewed, and we're trying to do a video. And one of the questions was about the broadband in Perth and how bad it was, and Perthshire, and what needed to be done, because the SNP had promised to have it all done by the end of this year, fibre optic, high-speed broadband, and it's going to be another 4 years before it comes on. So, yeah, I was completely kicked out, but hopefully we'll be all right.
Okay, well, look, welcome back, Don.
Yeah.
So you've covered a little bit about your background. Did you want to continue? So you've met the Duke of Edinburgh.
Yeah,
this tough schooling.
Yeah, but I went to study in Dundee after school, age 17, and that's when I got my first foray into politics. It was a time of Thatcher, and I was in the NUS, and I decided that we wanted devolution, so I got involved with the SNP in the early kind of years, and the time when the current leadership were probably getting involved as well. So it was a long, long time ago. But I went abroad, lived in France and Germany, picked up some languages, and kind of left the whole politics behind. And I didn't even think about politics at all until I came back to Scotland. And in 2018, I'd been living in England since pretty much after being abroad. So I'd never actually returned to Scotland since '89. I'd been living overseas and then in England. And when I came back to Scotland, I had the opportunity for a job up here. And I was so shocked at what I could find about the schools, the education, what I'd seen when I was younger. The education was so good. That's why I was sent to Scotland. It's just gone so far backwards. I'd seen about this. I've got at the time, she's a 7-year-old daughter. She's now 9. And the material that I saw and heard about that was being taught in schools for sex education was just, inappropriate for her age. The parental rights were being eroded. There was the named person scheme was going on along there, which still, even though we managed to kind of be put aside because of a legal technicality, it still appears in another format. And we've seen recently these questionnaires, and it seems to be named person 2.0 is coming back. So all these things, the anti-smacking bill, preventing parents from being able to discipline their own children effectively. We would never stand for any form of abuse, but the old law already had excessive force within it. So it was already valid protection. We didn't need to go this further and say you cannot even smack your child. And then, religious freedom of expression had been subdued. And then now we've got the hate crime legislation, which is a massive attack on freedom of speech. So when I come back, I just saw when you live in England, what you see of sort of Sturgeon, the SNP, and the Scottish politics is very fluffy. You see a strong, person sort of leading, but and doing a good job, and that's kind of what you see. Is very, very strong. And they don't even talk much about the independence, which is all we ever hear up here. In England, you don't really hear them bleating too much about that. So the view I got was the SNP were doing a good job. I'd seen new schools built. They're just opening the bridge. Edinburgh, when I came back, it just opened, and a lot of good positive things. So I'll join the SNP, and I did. So I joined them to try and get involved in politics, because I suddenly felt when I came back to Scotland, that was my calling, that politics was the route for me to go. I don't know why, but it suddenly relocked this kind of memory of getting involved in politics after 30 years. And I tried, so I joined the SNP, and I just found that the policies, the way they were doing things, the organisation, there was just no way I would be able to make any inroads, any impact. And so, as a member, I just kind of stood back, never went to any more meetings, never got involved. And then one day on Facebook, I saw a video from Richard, and I think that was about the sex education, or it was something along those lines. And I thought, hey, this is bad. I didn't realize it was this bad. And then I looked a bit more, because I was thinking to set up my own party, because there was Christian parties, I'm being a Christian myself, that were there, but there was nothing to them. There was no substance. There was no organization. I thought, I'll have to set my own up then if I'm going to get anywhere in politics. And I found this party that, a big chunk of the policies fitted with my views. I didn't think, and most people will never find a party that they agree with 100% with everything on it, but it was such a good fit, and no other party came close to most of the policies. So that was it. I contacted Richard. I contacted the party, and it was Richard obviously that answered, and we had a bit of a chat, and I looked at it, and then I joined. Richard invited me to a meeting in Dundee, and one in Perth, and then there was one in Kirkcaldy. We went to these different ones. I just thought, well, I'll get involved. Richard's building something here, and if he was struggling for people to step up and take any kind of responsibility or take some weight off his shoulders, and I said, well, I'll take on the Perth and Dundee kind of area, and then Fife was added on, and I started looking after that and became kind of chairman for those areas. And so from nothing, I suddenly started getting involved, supported Richard on a couple of things. We had the opportunity to talk and ask John Swinney a question in Perth, and things kind of moved on. So kind of thought, well, yeah, this is it. And now here we are, 2 years on from probably there. and I'm now the deputy chairman. So I'm glad to play a part and support and help shape the party, because no one person can do it on their own. And it's good to have a team. You've got myself, you, there's Richard, there's Phil, and there's a whole host of people around us, which is really good.
Yeah. Okay. So you had an interest in politics, and you came in the same route as myself, seeing Richard talking about sex instruction for children at schools, and it just shows you the power of just one sort of personal contact on YouTube to fire people back into sort of political activity. And thank goodness you are back, because I'd like to look at your campaign at the moment. If you can tell us what you're up to in the region and in Perth, and the sort of things you're, because you've got a job to do. You're quite successful in business. You've got a day job, and this is just something that's added on at the end. But I know you're terribly active within the constituency and within the region.
Yeah, I tell you, but my background is in digital marketing and social media, and retail, e-commerce, and online stuff. So I've kind of turned that to my advantage. So in the campaign, I've had there's been a podcast, there's been a couple of newspaper articles that they've asked me to just contribute. There was one they've asked, so the Perthshire Advertiser has asked all the local candidates to submit each week 200 words on a topic that they select, and last week it was about dirty camping in Perthshire. So not one of our policies, but one of our policies is environment, so I can relate it to that and to that. So when you're campaigning in a constituency, you've got to look at the local issues to there as well as, and that's something I've learned as well. One of the things that we did as a party is there was some images projected on some of the buildings that Richard showed earlier. There was some done in Perth. The projector we've got is pretty powerful, and some images there. And there was initially there was none of the press have actually published the picture, but there was one that caused a lot of initial controversy. Was John Swinney's face alongside some crudely drawn genital type pictures, is what there was described as, which John Swinney himself said were obscene. And this is the interesting thing. So John Swinney has called these images obscene, and these are the images that we took from the rshp.scot website that he has openly, to myself and to Richard in a public televised event, has endorsed and said are suitable, yet he calls them obscene. So these are the kind of things that we're looking to be able to challenge. Now, that was in there, and that wasn't a face-to-face, and I'm hoping to get the opportunity to have some hustings and open events that we can have these discussions. It was also called as a juvenile distraction, where I don't call teaching given offensive or obscene images use in school as trivial in any kind of way. It's not, this is quite serious when it comes to our children. So that caused a bit of controversy initially. And then there was another image which was next to a statue on a bench that said, "Stop confusing our children." And I had an image of a kind of transgender spectrum. And from that, we've been accused of hatred and hating transgender people and being against transgender at all. But it was to raise awareness about what has been taught in school and the ideology behind the transgender, which is pushed, from Stonewall through the government into education. And this is quite dangerous. And, the more you look at it, the more you read that there are a number of children, choose a life at some point because they've been influenced by something like this that really they may not have chosen if they'd not even known about it. And so there was a big, fuss with the, on Perthshire Pride. We're highly offended by it. I mean, we weren't intending to offend anyone, and I don't think the images were offensive. We're just saying stop confusing our children. We're not saying don't teach them anything. We're not saying we hate LGBT community or we hate transgender, but people turn it around to say that. So it's quite interesting. And so some of the interviews I've had on radio and podcasts and things, I've addressed this and said, you've projected these images, and how does it fit? So, but that's the truth. We're not trying to offend anyone. We're just trying to raise awareness of what's actually happening. Yeah. And not everyone will agree with it. And when you're a party that has views which are not the mainstream media pushed views and the mainstream media do not support because they've got another agenda, then you're going to get opposition towards it. But we also get a lot of support, as Richard said, with the comments from our flyer. We get some abuse, but we get some actual really positive comments. So
how do you find that ordinary mums and dads that you're meeting in the street or you're corresponding with, how do they respond to this pretty explicit set of resources for sex education in our schools?
Most don't want their children to see that, and certainly not at the ages that it's aimed at. I've actually done a couple of, and I did a deep analysis into the age groups that were around my daughter's age. So I've looked at the level 1 and the level 2 material in detail, and I went through it all, and I looked at all the material, and I picked out the ones. So some of it is fine, some of it teaches, really good, and it's a good way. And John Swinney said these were, to help children in the current society and prepare them for life, and and say that they're all being passed and thoroughly vetted. But I don't believe that teaching and parents I've spoken to, and these are normal parents, these are not, they're not strong Christian, or they're not one way or the other, or they're just people that I've spoken to are like, and if you showed them the image, they say, no, I wouldn't, or the content, they say, I don't want my son or daughter to learn that at that age. At age 6, telling people about bisexual, gay and lesbian relationships and what they mean, and actually referring to it in the sexual context, I don't believe they should be taught what sex is at that age at all. I mean, the material, it's all the wrong age. If you go back and you look at the preschool age, and what they teach there is probably, early stage primary. You need to drop it at least up, down one level, or up one level to make it age appropriate, and probably even 2 levels in some cases. So, my daughter is 9, and at this stage, she doesn't know what sex is. She knows the basics are made by mummies and daddies, and she knows the basics. She goes to a Catholic school, so she's not exposed to the same teaching. They have their own ways, which is good. And so not every school will use this material. And it'd be interesting to understand, maybe we need to do a Freedom of Information Act to see who's using this material, because you may actually find that, we're objecting against material that people don't use themselves because they object to it themselves, and so by not using it, it proves that it is the wrong material, and we can get it changed.
Yeah, I mean, I think they sort of condition a lot of the teaching staff to sort of accept this material and to break down their sort of natural barriers to it. But I think there are still some old school teachers, thank goodness for that, who refuse to countenance, the use of this material. And although the Catholic schools are a little bit better and do have their own syllabus, it is some of the stuff is pretty explicit. And all children go through a latency period where you don't want to disrupt their natural innocence, and they're not ready to receive this information, and it's highly disturbing. But I wish you. So that's one of the top items on your agenda, is the sex education. And I remember we had a very good discussion last week about marriage. That's that's something that is important to you in your existing marriage, and I know you're always sending me hints about how to be more romantic on Valentine's Day. But yeah, I think you help a lot of other men. You run a men's group, don't you?
Yeah, and I mean, over the last years, my wife and I have done live streams on Facebook and things about relationships and marriage. We were both married before, so I totally understand what the breakdown of marriage does and the damage it does to family. And I was doing some research on this as well. And one of it affects people's jobs. It affects their employers, because if someone's going through a divorce, they talk about the most stressful things in life, and getting married is one, buying a house is another, and I think getting divorced is these are the top 3 things. And maybe even having a child can be stressful, but it's probably the most joyful. But some of these things that are really stressful, and it affects your work. It affects that if you're going through a negative situation. And you know, so I do understand, and this is where sometimes we're challenged, you know, on our view of a mother, father, you know, a family unit that we encourage as being the best. And, you know, we do have to acknowledge as a party that, you know, and support that other family units do exist. But the more I've looked at this, I kind of knew it anyway, but I've done the research, and there's so many reports and things that talk about stable family life, stable married life, and children brought up in that do far better than children who are from cohabiting or other family formats. So, you know, as well. So they're a little less likely. So, I mean, people that married live longer. They build more wealth and they earn more money. There's less. So that the men as well tend to have more health benefits and greater health consequences when they divorce as well. That's when the men suffer the most. And so I've focused on men in two areas as well to support them on my own self, and that one is domestic abuse. So I myself, the reason why my first marriage fell down is there was an element of abuse within there. I can't go into full details, but you know, I've come through some pretty difficult times, and I tend to use that to help other guys. And I wouldn't wish that on anyone. And I know that I've supported females as well in the situation. And whether you're a male or a female who's been a victim of abuse, it's the same situation, which no matter what. The other area that I do focus on supporting guys off is breaking away from the addiction of pornography. And this is one that tends to go from word of mouth. It's not something that I've focused too much on and advertised, but people will come to me because someone will refer them, and I'll work with them to try and break that habit. Because you know, we've got Phil Tanzer, we've mentioned, who was in the porn industry, and he's fully aware of the damage it does to people within it, but also the damage it does to people who use it. And you know, pornography affects relationships, affects your health, your mental health. It's an addiction, and it gets worse. And so trying to break from that is very difficult, and it's very widespread. The problem is with the age of the internet. You know, when I was, you know, much younger, you know, magazines it was paper, and it was very hard to get, you know, and you had to walk and physically go and buy it or whatever, or someone would have to do it, and you know, a lot of people would put off for that. So there was a lot more barriers in the past. So even though it did exist, now the internet is just so open, and there's so many things you can see, and one thing leads to another. So I had tried to help guys break away from that, because it will help their marriages, it will help their relationships, and they help them. Because when they get into the porn to that level, they objectify women, and they sexualize women, and it just damages their whole thought process and relationships. So it's really important.
That sounds very good work. I mean, I gather the fastest growing segment in terms of the take up of watching pornographic material is between the ages of 12 and 17.
Yes.
And it is like, and we spoke about these resources the SNP are providing schools and recommending to schools. And a major recommendation is that pornography is fun, and it should be something you experiment with.
Exactly. Yeah. You know, it's supposed to be fun, experiment, and they do touch slightly on some of the dangers of overuse, but the whole thing is trivialized, and that is part of the problem. And I don't think it should be. I mean, it does exist, and people will look at it, but and you know, many will. But if you encourage it and think it's normal, then what does that do to the morals of society? What does that do to the morals of the people? And then that whole thought process, because it tends to lead to another. It's the same with drugs. You know, people, you legalize cannabis and people take cannabis. It very often leads on to other things. Or, you know, you start drinking at a young age, it can lead to alcoholism. You know, whatever, you know, if you've got an addiction or, you know, or a fixation on something, it can lead to so many other mental problems. And those lead into other lifestyle problems. So you know, it's important to kind of get this message out that we should be saying, look, yes, this exists, you may see it, but it's not. The message should be, at the very worst, it should be a balanced view to say, this is what exists. Some people think it's okay, but many people think it's bad, but at the moment it's kind of, this is okay, just enjoy it, have fun, sit back, relax and watch, and you do what you want to do. It's not, that's the attitude that's given, and it's not one thing that we want to portray as a party, and I agree with as a father. I wouldn't want my daughter exposed to that until, she's not allowed to get married till she's 25. That's fine.
Yeah.
But no, hopefully, it's about letting children be children and expose them to these things at an early age. And teenagers are very, they've got enough to contend with, with puberty and growing and the exams and pressure to confuse them with too many other things. And that's why, some of the transgender ideology thrown in at that time, it can cause all sorts of problems. So the message, explaining and giving an understanding to teenagers about what there is in life and what they will face is great, but trivializing it and making it okay to do whatever you want to do, I think there has to be boundaries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I gather from the research that the more pornography that an individual consumes, just like other drugs, there's a requirement for harder and harder pornography, and more extreme forms of pornography to satisfy the individual. And I suppose a question to you was, how successful is your program?
It's pretty good, yeah. It's a pretty decent success rate. It takes time. It takes time, and the main thing is about having accountability. First is admitting and understanding that you've got the problem, and that doesn't matter what it is. It's understanding you've got a problem, admitting it, and admitting it openly to someone else, and that generally needs to be in a safe environment. People. That's the thing. If pornography is so good and it's so great, why won't people admit that they watch it? Why won't people admit that they're addicted to it? Oh, great, I'm addicted to it. People don't say that. So it can't be that great, and they can't feel that great about it. So it's a bit of a taboo subject. So it needs to be, in a very safe environment. But we encourage them to have someone that they can have accountability to. And there are so many apps and things like that as well that you can put on your phone, and you can restrict your internet at home. That means that you can't see it. There's so many things that you can do and mechanisms from that perspective. And then there's the fact that it's like any addiction. If you're on a diet, for example, and you're not going to eat chocolate, you probably might go 3 weeks and not eat chocolate, and then you give in and you have a piece of chocolate. And it's about the fact, okay, you've fallen off the wagon. Let's get back on it. Don't keep going. Keep going just because you've had a lapse. And it's the same thing that it does take time to break these habits. But yeah, I've had some really good interesting conversation. So we've got a comment here, so yeah.
Supporting the addiction model, yeah.
It's exactly right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I agree with you, Xander. Thank you. Yeah, it's a really good. So your brain on porn, .com.
Yeah, thanks for that, Xander. And there's some very, very wise words from you, Don, on that, and on marriage, and on the sex instruction. I want to turn to a sort of a practical side now, that many of our viewers will be in sort of the more elderly age group, and we've got some young ones as well. But and you're a social media specialist. That's your sort of expertise. I wonder what sort of tips you've got for supporters of the Scottish Family Party who want to promote the party and use social media platforms. Do you have some big hitting tips that you can give our viewers on getting the exposure for the party, and how to safely use these platforms?
Yeah, the main thing, first is to like, to like and comment. A lot of the different social media platforms work on algorithms. So these algorithms are based on, if people start liking something, they show it to more people. So this is why Richard, is saying that we're not getting the exposure. We need people to like it. So the more that like it, then Facebook algorithm automatically goes, oh, we like it. Now, it could be that there's been, the reason why things are not getting shown is because for the number of likes, maybe some people are reporting it, but they're not that just been people reporting it, but it's not substantiated. So you don't get banned and you don't hear about it. So there could be the negative side. So the more likes you get and the more comments. So when people comment and then you respond to your comments, so it's really important where you can, from our perspective, to respond to comments and keep those comments going, because that, definitely influences the algorithm and puts it in front of more people. Sharing content as well. Now it depends on the platforms, but some sharing, on Facebook, so that your own people that know you get to see it, and retweeting on Twitter, things like that as well. Subscribing to the YouTube channel. Even you can share the link, and share the content direct on your own social media platform. As well. So it's about engaging and commenting, and also when you share something, helping that engagement go for other people. One of the things that we tested out a couple of days ago, I tested out and we'd never looked at it before, was TikTok. So I've been on TikTok for since lockdown started last year. I kind of got onto it, and there was a craze of doing little dances and silly things and things going on as well. And there's lots of fun things on there. And I've built a small following, and I've got the number of likes, but I was blown away by the response on TikTok for our videos. So within 3 days, we've had, over 20,000, about 23,000 views on some of our posts. And I've created stuff just to put on. One of them, I shared the video with about Joanna Cherry and Nicola Sturgeon on it, and that's had nearly 13,000 views. I shared last night, and I had to go because it's 2 minutes long. I had to go in 2 segments of 1 minute videos of the Report in Scotland piece last night on BBC, and that's had, say, 5,000 views already. But we're getting comments. And Richard Lucas is going to do a dance routine, but you've got to wear the wig and the glasses and everything from that mock picture that you were all dolled up on as well.
I mean, that's frightening. Yeah. That's frightening, Don, isn't it?
It is. It is. Grandad dancing there, that's for sure. He's going to slap me afterwards. Yeah. And we do not endorse violence in any form. So just to say there, but we do have a sense of humor. We do have a sense of humor. We're not straight laced, and we're not a bunch of do-gooders that we're certainly not bigots. I wish people would understand the definition of the word before using it in a very intolerant manner, because we are quite tolerant of most things that get thrown at us. TikTok has been really good, and within a few days we've seen it. We do get a few negative comments as well on there, but the negative gets people talking. And it's funny how some people will make negative comments about us, and people will come and defend us at the same time. So there's a saying in marketing that there's no publicity there's no bad publicity. All publicity gets your name known. And, like Richard was saying at the start, if we do a projection and someone objects to it, that's the news story. People are objecting to us, but more people see it. So it's really good.
Mm-hmm. So, and then in your own business interests, you've built up really big followings, haven't you, on a variety of platforms?
Yeah. I've got a Facebook page with my wife that we've had since we met. So my second wife. My wife is from Africa, so we've got a big African community. We've got a charity in Africa and a business that supports makeup in Africa, and it's pretty good. We've got a lot of followers, a lot of fans, and they look to us because we've created a marriage from 2 failed marriages, and people look to us as an example. So we've got about 40,000 followers on our joint page, official page, and I've got
that's
YouTube
big,
channel. YouTube channel with a decent amount of followers as well, and good engagement. So it's good fun. Keeps me out of mischief.
Yeah,
keeps me in mischief.
But you have to work at this, don't you? It's not a stop-start thing. I mean, you're constantly looking to build the following, to accept friends, and to keep marketing to them. So once you're on this escalator, you've got to keep going, or you fall off.
Yeah. I say I'm just distracted slightly because we've got some nice persons managed to come on and post some, pretending to be the Scottish Family Party, posting some great comments. So it's funny that the abuse that we've had on our leaflet going through to houses as well. But funny enough, the other day I got this yesterday come through my door, and I find this so offensive. It's terrible. You know, the SNP are wanting to care NHS and care services. They want them fit for the future. It's terrible. You know, how could someone post this? Look at that. Some of the things coming through your door are terrible. You know, how can you actually substantiate putting that through my door? It's just terrible.
I mean, I came across a thing the other day called a Zoom bombing, and
Zoom bombing.
Yeah, where suddenly all these attackers descended onto our Zoom meeting and were showing pornographic images, horrendous comments. There was noise. It sounded like sort of Russian noise, horrible sort of devilish sounds. And we were trying to swap these away. But the whole screen was full of these infiltrators, and I gather it's called a Zoom bombing.
Zoom bombing. Okay.
So we've got the same meeting tomorrow, so I think we're going to be better prepared. But it was so bad, I had to report it to the police.
Yeah,
and they're investigating it because I think, I mean, it's against the Communication Act, isn't it?
And there's also the Police Scotland are taking a zero tolerance of abuse against candidates in this election. And so, yeah, if people are going to abuse us, and then there could be problems. But yeah, sorry, it was actually us. It was Richard's posted what some of the comments from emails that we've had to show the kind of stuff that's getting sold. So it wasn't actually a comment on. So yeah, it was my mistake doing two things at once. But yeah, but it does show that some of the interesting comments that we do get. I've had a few people message me direct and things on an email, send emails through and just saying how vile we are. But the weird thing is that most of it has no depth. So they would say that we hate transgender people, but they cannot produce a single policy. And one of the interviews I had, they'd actually gone through, they'd seen these comments, seen what had been said, gone through our policies, and he said, look, honestly, I've gone through all your policies and I can't find anything that's homophobic, transphobic or anything. I can see things that I don't agree with and people won't agree with, but it's not phobic, and that's the difference, is that we are, because we're on a side and saying things that not everybody will agree with, then that's how it is. But people take that, and because they don't agree with it, but the whole election is toxic. If you look on social media, it doesn't matter who you are. If you're in the SNP, if you're in Labour, or if you're whatever side you're on, if you're for independence, against independence, if you look on Twitter, which is probably the worst, some of the hatred that's going about directed to everyone is just above all. And that's one thing that we want to try and stop is, there's hate speech laws and there's hatred. There's two different things about it. We're for freedom of speech, but we're certainly not against hatred and real hatred. That's what we're talking about. And the reason we're against the freedom of speech bill is because it removes the freedom to just say basic things that you agree with, rather than anything, that's actually hateful. So, and I don't think anything we do is hateful, and it's certainly not meant to be hateful in any way. I take offense at being called a hater, because I don't hate anyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well said. And my final sort of line of questioning is going back to marriage. And you've got an African wife. It's your second marriage, and I know cross-cultural marriages are difficult. I mean, my wife's Dutch, and I just find the English and Dutch cultures different enough to make it awkward. So you've got sort of African and Scottish. And but I know you work very hard at the romance side of things. And can you give us a sort of a few hints about being a husband, being a good husband, a loving husband, a romantic husband, and how properly to treat a wife, despite these sort of the cultural complications?
Well, the cultural complications can be there. if you let them be there. The thing is that I've lived abroad. I touched on it earlier. I've lived in France and Germany, and I speak a few foreign languages. And when I met my wife, I just embraced her culture. For me, I found it really interesting and understanding. I'd never dated a black person. I'd never been to Africa. I'd known some African but mainly Caribbean black people from work, and so I didn't really know much about the culture. But we met and we fell in love, and the rest kind of came with it. And I just went with the flow. So one of the things is that adopting and understanding your differences and embracing those differences, because there's no such thing as a perfect marriage. There's going to be things that you don't agree, and it was really apparent some of the values and some of the things that could be different, some of the background could be different, but at the end of the day, it's about listening, it's about talking, it's about being open and just understanding. So I've learned her language from her home, and I've been to Africa. And she's here in Scotland. Most cases now, she's the only black person in a community around. I've been to Africa and been in the same way, being the only white person and totally in a black African area, and actually being able to understand that, embrace it, and fit in. And I've been accepted, as one, as she has been here. And that's part of it. So you accept each other's ways, you accept each other's culture, you adapt. And I'll eat their African food, and I'll cook them food, and they'll eat, what I cook as well. We take turns and for the family, and it's really interesting. And as far as the main thing is to have respect for one another. Now, I've been in a marriage where things were very controlled, and it was controlling. You weren't free to do what you want. And the fact is that if you give each other freedom, then you can. There's a box that you live in, but you choose to stay within that. I mean, my wife, lets me have my motorbike, but I don't go off riding for days on end on my motorbike. But I use it for going to work or things like that as well. So she lets me do things that I wasn't previously allowed to do. She wanted to start a makeup business when we met, and we did that. And 5 years on, we've got a makeup business that's been running for 5 years and doing really well. And we employ, I think there's about 12 women now and girls that we employ in Africa. And from the profits of that, we actually support 60 disabled women in Africa. So we're able to give something back, and that's part of the dream. And we're not rich or anything like that, but we just enjoy sharing things together and being open. Mm-hmm. So, and when it comes to romance, you gotta surprise them and do things. I know a guy at my work, a friend of mine, and he would never buy his wife flowers. Well, I buy my wife flowers. I don't buy them just on Valentine's. In fact, I wouldn't normally buy them on Valentine's because that's when everyone buys them. I buy them on the 28th of the month, which is, we were married on the 28th. So I just buy them every now and again. I'll surprise her, or I'll bring them just because I feel like I want to. I'll cook a meal differently. I'll organize something for Valentine's. I turned this room into a restaurant and decorated it all and did that, and things like that. And we'll go on a little trip, or we'll go on a walk just together and spend some time together. So,
did I see on Facebook that your dear wife arranged for a chef to come in and cook? Yes, cook a meal for you.
Yeah, I mean, bless her. For the last few years, she's been studying. So I've supported her. We've got a makeup business, and she's been studying. But after finishing, and she works in schools, she got a job and earned some money, and so she decided to wanted to treat me. So yeah, we couldn't go out because of the restrictions and lockdown. This is in February, but she arranged for a gourmet chef, to come in and cook us a meal at home, which was it was actually amazing. Yeah, it's really good. So it works both ways.
Yeah. And so when you say you do your talking and your listening, you respect each other, you have a time for talking and listening. When is there a special time you set aside for that? Is it over supper? Is it as soon as you get back from work?
It tends to be later on in the evening, probably when we go to bed as well. Or if we have, my mother-in-law lives with me as well. So my wife's daughter, who I've adopted as my own, and my mother-in-law. So we have a family. So we would maybe go out and we'll go and do some shopping when I'm back from work or stuff like that as well, and spend some time. We'll go for a walk together, so we can leave our daughter and have a little bit of time together. We tend to take maybe at least, if we can, once a year, a week or a few days at our anniversary or something like that, or one of our birthdays, to spend some time together. Just the two of us, and that really helps. So yeah, we just make sure that we have time to talk, and just share what's on our mind. So, we don't hide anything, and that was what I found in my previous marriage, that the atmosphere was such that you had to hide stuff, or you couldn't say things for want of provoking a situation. Whereas here, I feel I can talk and say anything. And we're both Christians. She was the one that brought me back to going to church. And so, we go out. When there wasn't restrictions, we would go to organized events and parties together within maybe the African community or that. And so we'd slay together, and then we'd pray together. That's our main secret, I'd say.
Okay. Well, some great advice for our viewers and listeners. And you're obviously a very considerate husband.
Yeah.
And I'm very pleased that you've shared some of your experiences and your advice, to us all. But I mean, you've got me. I'm determined to try a bit harder and do a bit more listening. And as you say, respect is important, isn't it?
And how much Dutch do you speak?
Oh, my Dutch is pretty good, actually, Don. Yeah.
Geen Nederlands.
Ik spreek heel goed Nederlands.
Geen Nederlands.
Geen.
So yeah, tot ziens. No, I'd worked in Holland, so I like the language. So it's important sometimes as well, especially when you've got extended family. But I saw one comment. I do want to. Someone had just made a comment, and they've gone now. But they said, "Why do we hate trans people?" And this is one of the things that keeps getting banded. And as a party, as individuals, I don't know anyone in the party or the party that hates any group of people, whether it be trans, whether it be gay, whether it be lesbian. That is not what we're about, and that needs to be made clear. We don't like some of the ideology that's been taught about it, and we prefer a stable family environment with a mother and father because it's proven to be the best. But it doesn't mean that we're not against any other type of people. And I think people need to realize that and just understand we are open and human. And I'm happy to have dialogue at any point in time on this, because I'll stand by that and say, come and talk to me. I'm not scared because I'm not against you. Simple as that.
Mm-hmm. Are there any other posts that have come up that you want to comment on, Don?
Yeah, there's a friend of mine who just come up and says I'm fluent in double Dutch and he wants to see me dancing. So thank you, Neil, for that. But yeah, I'm dancing. I was taught to dance by my wife, so I couldn't dance before I met her. When you go to some of these parties, you have to. So
yeah, they do. Like I remember at my son's seminary in Rome that with the African priests, that you end up in a big line going all around all the buildings, and everyone moving in the same sort of way. It's really invigorating, I must say. But
African weddings, and I've had one myself. They're really good fun. They're really good fun, and it's just amazing. And anyone that experienced that, I've got some people I know, and that my family came down from Scotland. We had it in our garden in England at the time we were living in Coventry. My family came down, some from Scotland, some from all over, and they just blended in and loved it. It was amazing to see that those cultures work together. And then we made them have a Scottish wedding, so we had a Scottish wedding as well. So we had two. So. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I suppose I need to wrap this up. But I'd like to thank you, Don, for having this frank conversation. And it's just a lovely chat. And you're very informal, and you've got bags of experience. So I found that section on the social media very interesting, and your advice to us all on marriage, and the sad story you told us about the men that are addicted to pornography, and the help you provide to them. That was very, very interesting. But it's been a great conversation, and
thank you.
Could I thank you for your time?
Thank you, Michael.
And I wish you every success in your campaign.
We can just do our best and do what we can.
Yeah.
And we'll see what happens. You know, it's
Yeah.
the first time. You know, people are getting to know us, and that if that's all we achieve, then that's good enough for me at this stage. But you never know. We're in it, and you know, we'll see it through to the end.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Don.